All right, hello and welcome to my Magic the Gathering how to do that video. You might have noticed on my channel I've been putting where I basically buy a box of booster packs and I open them up because it's fun and it's kind of neat, and I figured I'd put it out there for you guys to watch. But some people have been saying, hey, I like these videos, but I don't really know how to play Magic. And so basically this video and maybe one other afterwards, actually definitely one other after, will hopefully give you kind of some rudimentary ideas of how to play, how to start playing, and sort of a place to go, maybe help you gauge your interest, see if you wish to get sunk into the mire of a Magic the Gathering addiction, which I can assure you is fun but can get expensive. So what I'm going to be doing is using Magic Duels of the Planeswalkers 2015, which is actually any of the Duels of the Planeswalkers are a really great and relatively inexpensive way for you to learn how to play Magic. It enforces the rules for you. It makes sure you play pretty much correct. I've come across a few bugs where it's done not the right thing, but it's a really great kind of way to dip your toe in to learn sort of how the flow of Magic goes and whatnot. So this one is going to be primarily a gameplay game, and so we'll do a Storm the Castle, I guess. So I've been working through this one for a little bit. So yeah, I'll just teach you how to play the game. So as you can see, Magic the Gathering, you start out with a hand of 7 cards. I know how many cards there are. Basically, and the object of the game most of the time is to get your opponent's life down to 0. There are other ways of winning the game. There's a strategy called milling, where you basically make them have no cards in their library, and then when they have to draw a card, and if they don't have one, they lose. There are other various alternative ways to win, but the primary way, 95% to 99% of the time, is getting your opponent's life down to 0. And so everybody starts out with seven cards, and you get to decide if you like to keep it or send it back for one less to try. So going over this, so real quick also, the basis of all the spells and all the everything is mana right here. And so there are 5 different types of mana: green, white, blue, red, I'm going a little slow, and black, yeah, or Werborg or whatever. And there's it's swamps, plains, mountains, islands, and forests. And basically these are your currency in order to be able to spend to spend on your turn or not on your turn in order to cast various spells. And so you can see this is a land, and this land can make black or green mana. So if I had 3 of these, I could cast the Scion of the Wild, because I could tap it 2 of them for green mana, which would fulfill that portion of the casting cost, and then 1 for black or anything colorless. Basically means you can spend any type of mana for this. So if I had 3 Golgari Guildgates out, I could tap 3 of them, and boom, I'd have a Scion of the Wild. So going forward, this hand actually I'm not going to keep because it's 1 land and a bunch of spells, really expensive spells. I've made a kind of mono green thing, so this is actually a really good deck to kind of learn the basics with. Okay, so this is actually much better. So I have 3 lands, 4 spells. Fantastic. I even have a creature to drop on the first. But actually the Storm the Castle guy gets to play first. Boo to him. But I have life gain. I have basically this is really good. So I'm gonna keep this hand, and we'll see what this guy does. So now if you notice right here, there are four little gems right here that represent each turn. My turn and his turn has 4 phases. There's the first main phase. So actually here, we'll go I didn't. Sometimes you have to stop. So I am now. He passed the turn to me. I am now in my first main phase. In your first and second main phases, you can cast anything called a sorcery, which is basically a spell that does something. Not that is a spell that doesn't. It does various things. So, like for instance, this sorcery for 2 colorless, so tapping 2 of any land and 1 green. I can search my library for up to 2 basic land cards, which are these, and put the 1 onto the battlefield, which is there, and then 1 into my hand. I can't do that yet because I have no mana out. But being that this is my first main phase, I could have cast a sorcery or a creature, which is actually what I'm going to do. I'm casting a creature right now. So now in Magic, there spells happen at 2 different speeds. There's instant speed and sorcery speed. Creatures go at sorcery speed, and basically anything that's sorcery speed can only be cast on your first or second main phase. So I'm in my first main phase, so I'm casting a creature. Super swell. Then, after your first main phase, you move on to your the second phase, which is the combat phase. That's when you get to attack. But since my creature just came out, it can't attack. It has summoning sickness. Basically, it needs to go through an upkeep phase, which we'll get to but it needs to go through my upkeep phase before it's no longer summoning sick or stuff. So I'm just gonna pass, and that's my second main phase, where I could also cast sorceries or whatever, sorceries or creatures, but I don't have enough mana to do it, so I pass the turn. Alright, so now it's his turn. Chose not to cast anything in his first main phase, nor his second. Alright, things are going to be a little different now. So I have a Timberland Guide who, when I can cast, I have enough to cast him in my first main. And when he enters, the cool thing about Magic is when you look at Magic cards, basically you can figure out what's going on with them. You can figure out most of the rules by actually reading the card. So before my combat phase, I am going to cast a Timberland Guide. And when he enters, I can put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. I could even put it on himself, but I'm going to do it on this guy because this guy is cool because he can't be blocked except by creatures with flying or reach. So we'll get to that in a second once they have some creatures out. And so I'm going to move to combat, and now since my creature's been through an upkeep, which I should have told you, so at the beginning of your turn, there are like kind of sub phases going on there. There's and I always fuck up the order of these. It's upkeep and then draw, I believe. So basically the beginning phase, it's untap, upkeep, and draw. So when it gets to my turn, if you notice, all my cards tapped basically shows that I've spent the mana to do a thing. So when it gets back to my turn, there's the untap phase, and then upkeep is if there are any other costs or anything that I need to do after untap. That's when those happen. Sometimes there's things called echo or whatever, but don't worry about that. We're just gonna keep on going with the stuff, the basic stuff. And then there's draw, where you actually draw a card. So the my creature is gone through that upkeep phase, so now he can attack. So I will attack with all, and I think he may have no tricks. So the thing I was like, I think he may have. If you remember, I said you can only cast sorceries on your turn in your first or second main phases. There are things called instants, which can be cast at any time, even your opponent's turn. So at one thing I was like considering that was a possibility is that he had there's an instant that makes 2 guys instantly just on my turn. However, he didn't cast that. Plus, also it wouldn't have mattered because the guys he would have been able to make wouldn't have been able to block him anyhow. So, alright, I attack. I got him down to 18. Huzzah. We're doing real good here. I'm going to pass the turn. Nothing to cast in my second main. Alright, is he going to cast a thing in his second main phase? He is. And what do we have? Palace Guard can block any number of creatures. It's a 1/4. So this is a power and toughness. So normally creatures can only, yeah, this is a good time to talk about power and toughness. Normally only creatures can block one thing. This guy has an ability that lets him do more. And he has power and toughness, which is basically the amount of damage it can do and the amount of damage that it can take. So for instance, gonna go into upkeep. So for instance, if I were to, on this turn, attack with this guy, he'd be able to block, and then basically kill this guy, and he would survive because we'd each do 1 damage to each other. But I only have the ability, this guy only has the ability to absorb 1 damage, whereas he can absorb 4. Now, normally this would be a pretty good kind of wall, but my Spire Tracer can only be blocked by creatures with flying or reach, and he has neither of those. So I am going to continue to attack with him, punishing him. I'm going to hold this guy back and not attack with him. Now there are a lot of reasons why sometimes you would attack or you wouldn't attack. I'm not going to attack because for a couple reasons. One, this guy gives buffs. This is an ability, a mana ability. And abilities move at instant speed, so I can cast it at any time, or activate it is actually what it is. It's not a, it's an active, sorry, it is an activated ability with a mana cost. So I could do it at any time. So he gives a buff to creatures for 3 colorless and a green, plus power plus toughness equal to the amount of creatures you have. So I'm already ahead in life. He's only going to hit for 1, so there's no reason to really block. And this guy's going to keep on getting through. So what I want to do is get this guy out, keep these guys alive to keep the buff that I give my Spire Tracer a bigger boost. So he did a thing that gives his soldiers more stuff, and oh, that guy's pretty good too. So right now we're racing. Racing. But I'm not too worried. I'm pretty confident of my abilities. Also, another reason why I don't want these guys to die is because when this guy comes out onto the battlefield, when I cast him after this guy, I will gain 1 life equal to every sign like this on the battlefield. So with him out and then casting him as well, I'm in position to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 life. So if we're just racing and I can keep on hitting, that's a pretty good deal. But I am gonna actually put this guy out. And granted, I can't activate it right now. But yeah, we'll talk. Actually, strategy-wise, usually when playing against a human player, oh no, don't attack with all. Just attack with that. Sorry, I'm a little out of it today. Normally, like when playing with the human player, if I would cast my creature at my second main phase, because the reason to do that is when I enter into my attacks, I want to keep my unless the creature does something like this guy to make him bigger, or there's some other benefit, I want to keep my mana open to either pretend or actually have a spell that I could cast on him. So let's say this guy doesn't. Let's say this guy didn't have the thing that makes him unblockable to his board. Let's say he was just a 3/3, and let's say this was a bigger creature, was also a 3/3. I could conceivably attack with this guy, and then he would block. He'd maybe block with him, and then I'd be able to cast a spell to buff this guy up, making my guy stay alive and kill his dude. So by keeping the mana open, I can kind of pretend, sort of bluff that I have that. But that isn't the case. I'm just gonna like keep on attacking. So basically, what I'd do if I was playing tighter is I would have attacked with this guy, and then moving into the second main phase would have summoned that guy. But I didn't, because I'm kind of talking and thinking and doing 9 things at once. So that's how that's going down. All right. So here, oh, that's really good. So what this is an enchantment. It's not a creature, but it's something that lives on the battlefield that basically does a thing. And what this thing does is very good. It gives all his creatures +1/+1, which is pretty redonkulous. So now he's swinging for 5. Fortunately for me, I'm already pretty far ahead. Like, he'll only put me at 14, so I'm not gonna block with anything. He can S my Wienar. So yeah, so I'm still ahead, still putting stuff, putting stuff down that he's not gonna be able to. Pinging away 3 each time. Put him at 7. So now the question is, do I attack with this guy and buff him up and hit him for 7? Which is, yes, probably I do. That'll put him at 5. And then summon the next thing next time. Or if I attack now, it'll put him at 9 without buffing him. It looks like it's 3 attacks anyhow. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to attack. 2, 6, 2, 3. Another thing that I can do is try to attack. I can spend this on anybody at any time. Question is now, if I attack and just buff him to get the damage, or do I want to attack with one of these dudes to trick him into blocking it? I could make any of these guys a 5/5, which if he blocked with that, it wouldn't kill it. It wouldn't do anything. So I'm just gonna, well, if I attacked with him, he'd be a 7. No, but then he could double block. So I'm just gonna attack with that. Stop the timer before damage, because you basically, whenever you attack, you declare attackers, and if they have anything to do before that, if they have any instances, they can go, I have effects. And if they don't, you proceed with the attack. And then, so you declare which of your creatures are attacking, and then you move on, and that person declares who is going to be blocking who, or if they aren't. And then once those are in, so each of these phases, you have a chance to do a thing. And so then once the blockers are declared, you have a chance to enact. And then there's another thing where it's basically like, all right, attackers are declared, blockers are declared. How are we gonna, how's damage gonna be assigned? So basically, as the attacker, you get to decide how damage is assigned, but you also have a chance to do effects before then. So that's what I am going to do by boosting him a whole bunch. So I'm hitting him for 7. Swell. And like I said, I'm kind of going over this fast, and it's kind of quick. But if you pick up this game, you pick up like one of the duels. I think you can even get like 2013 for very, very cheap. He's only gonna put me at 7. I don't care. That's the other thing. Is like sometimes, a lot of times, you just take the damage. It's no biggie. I win. Hooray for me. So we'll do the same thing again. Attack. He can't block. I'm gonna boost it. Unless he's got some sort of removal, which he does not. Haha. I emerge victorious. Swell. Super hot. All right. Let's see, do I get a pack of a thing? Oh boy. 2015 is kind of interesting because they do this thing where it's like you open boosters. So let's see if I got anything of any good. Ooh, Baneslayer. Baneslayer is really good. Protection. Here, I'll I'll go over what that means. So, first strike is an interesting thing. I'll go over actually each bit of the thing just real quick over that. So normally when creatures do damage to each other, like when one attacks and one blocks, they do damage at the same time during the damage phase. And then, you know, if you do enough lethal damage, if your power is equal to or greater than the other creature's toughness, that creature dies. However, there's this thing called First Strike, where basically that creature does its damage first. There's an additional damage step called First Strike damage. And so let's say I was, my Baneslayer Angel was blocked by I don't know, a 5/1 whatever. So it had 5 power and 1 toughness. Now, if my Baneslayer Angel didn't have First Strike and it got blocked by it, the Baneslayer Angel would die, the other creature would die. However, since it has First Strike damage, when it's blocked by the 5/1, the Baneslayer Angel does its 5 damage first, and the creature dies. So it's pretty hot shit. There's also this thing called Double Strike, where basically it does First Strike damage and then regular damage again. So, for instance, if I just did damage to, like, if I just went through on like on a player and it didn't block, the Baneslayer would do 10 damage, which is pretty hot. Lifelink is pretty simple. Any damage that the Baneslayer Angel does, you gain in life. So every time it hits something for 5, you gain 5 life. Is really awesome. Protection is an interesting thing. Basically, this one's kind of different. Normally, it's protection versus a color. So basically, what protection means is this card can't be targeted by demons or dragons. So a demon can't block it. If this creature blocks a demon, the demon does no damage to it. If the demon or dragon has an ability, like a mana ability, that does a thing that targets it, that says target creature loses this or loses that, it can't target this creature. However, protection can't protect it from if a demon had a thing that said all creatures get -5/-5, this would still be affected by that because it's not actually targeting it, which kind of illustrates an interesting point, or an interesting mechanic within Magic, is that it's very literal. What reading the card will get you. But so basically, because protection protects it from being targeted, if the card doesn't say target, it's not protected from that. Anything else? I'm sorry, this is kind of all over the place. I just sort of decided to do this on a whim. Are there any other interesting things in here? No, not really. Anyhow, so yeah, that's what I got. I think it is pretty good stuff. Oh, here's an artifact. Usually, it's another type of permanent that's on the battlefield. Some artifact is equipment, which means for a certain mana cost you can actually put it on a creature. Other artifacts just are there and can be used. They're kind of like enchantments and can be used. Usually they have an ability, whether it's an activated mana ability or a triggered one. A triggered one is when something happens, this happens. You don't have to spend mana to do it. This is basically, Hot Soup's kind of a funny one, but basically, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed my first little introduction to Magic for you guys. And, yeah, if you have any questions, once I put this up, I will be more than happy to answer them in the comments. Also, if this tickled your fancy, I'm sure you can pick up one of the Duels of the Planeswalkers for super cheap. It's on Steam, it's on Xbox Live, it's on iPad. There's really no excuse for you not to pick it up and give it a whirl. All right, well, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one, where I cover rough deck making.